All right, I guess we get free background shooting noises. All right, Bill, pretend you're a real caller. What do you want to talk about?
Oh, all right. How about the new Sandusky thing that's going up at the restaurant across the street?
I am unaware.
That the restaurant, there's already people all worried about it.
I do not know anything about that one. So, how about our friend out in the fighting with the Bureau of Land Management in Nevada, who decided to say some crazy things off the cuff today?
Oh, taking over everything.
Yeah, and also that he decided to speak out on race issues and prove that maybe he isn't exactly the most tolerant individual in the history of Nevada.
Yeah, on the news today, he had African Americans or blacks might have been better off as slaves.
Yeah, and I think he lost a lot of his credibility. I know Glenn Beck had said run away from him, and I read an article about it, and I actually feel the same way. Initially, you feel sympathetic for the guy, and I do think there's important federalism issues at stake, but then you find out that he's really not that sympathetic, and he seems to have a lot of issues when it comes to deciding who to support. And so, unfortunately, what he did was goon up a pretty good issue, and of course, give conservatives a black eye, essentially.
Yeah, that he did.
So what can you do?
I know Glenn started backing away from him the other day.
And you almost wonder, because, I've been involved in a couple high-profile cases, as you know. You kind of started to bring one up. News percolates, and I'm wondering if people hadn't heard some of this stuff before and knew what was coming, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like this, it may have leaked. This information or this attitude may have been known to people on the ground, and somebody from, say, the Blaze calls Glenn up and says, "Hey, we're starting to hear some crazy things from this guy. You might want to back off of him."
Well, it's how you going to be able to do like a podcast where tons of people can be on Skype at once in some way?
Yeah, we can actually take group calls on the Skype, and then if we get a little more sophisticated and I add a second Skype account, somebody can screen calls on that Skype account and then just forward them on demand over to me.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so, and actually right now we're broadcasting live on the internet, so anybody can intercept a live signal. So, AM radio, a lot of the big stations, including the one I was on, their listenership is now approaching 50% online. So broadcasting entirely online probably was suicide 5 years ago, but these days is A, plausible, and B, this Spreaker system that we're using automatically turns it into a podcast when we're done. Of course,
Matthews, is it? He's sort of like a miniature Glenn Beck. He's more national than he is local.
And I had said something to Bob Durgan years ago about, why didn't you get syndicated? And he had said to me something along the lines of, you don't get to talk about the local issues. And that was something that was near and dear to his heart, and probably, as everybody listening to the show knows that. I also think Ken's not originally from this area, but nor was Bob originally, so it may take him some time to learn, who everybody is.
Now, I always because I used to listen to the Michael Spreaker show in Philly, even though I live here in Gettysburg, and the difference in the caller IQ level that would call into Michael's show compared to the Harrisburg show is incredibly different.
Well, there's two things about that. Number one is they do get the call volume allows you to select who you want, and the time for call screening. So if you have a producer who also has to run the show and screen the calls, which is the way it is over there. Art does a wonderful job, but he's got to do 5 things at once. When you get to the national level, or even some of the bigger regional shows like a Philadelphia, they may have one person running a board and one person just doing phone lines and actually chatting the people up for a couple minutes before they put them on hold, and they get a feel for them, and so they kill a lot of bad callers before they ever make the air.
Wow.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, Michael Spreaker is on my Sirius radio in my company car now. I'll tune him in once in a while if I get bored with Glenn.
Well, if you go on like a Limbaugh show and you call in and you do get through, you'll end up talking to the screener for quite a period of time. And that's why you also notice at the national level when the callers come on, they always sound like so smooth and articulate. They're not that big hesitations all the time. And that has a lot to do with they've been fluffed and warmed up for 20 minutes talking to, Snurdly off the air. And so by the time they get on with Rush, they're all calmed down and tuned into what they want to talk about. And,
wow.
And the other thing Rush can do, because they'll have like 15 or 20 lines available, they will queue up for him 10 or 15 callers, name, location, and what they want to talk about in great detail. And then Rush can sort of paint with that. So if he doesn't want to talk about a certain topic, he won't pick somebody. But at any given moment, he may have 15 people, and he can pick one, and then he can pick another one that transitions well, and it gives him a lot stronger, what we call production value. Like, for instance, the production value of this broadcast is very poor because my son is playing Star Wars on my cell phone in the neighboring chair, as you can hear in the background.
I only use my Skype to talk to my publisher. He lives in Australia.
Ah, very nice.
So we talk every Friday afternoon for 3 to 4 hours.
Well, we're gonna, now that we got it up and running, and I'm gonna test this here in a minute. I'll be able to listen back to the broadcast. Maybe people will give us some feedback. But I really appreciate doing this little test. I'm not gonna let it last much longer. But here's what I promise you: when we do get this show up and running, and I haven't decided on hours, etc., and exact format and what we're going to talk about. But we're working on that. But when that happens, I will not have any kids playing in the background, and we will tune up the Skype a little bit better. But
that's all right. I was just goofing around on. I was sending out our newsletter. I run the military history group in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. So.
Oh, yeah, very cool. Well, yeah, and I appreciate you hitting me up on Facebook because I was looking for anybody live who wanted to go on and try this because, I get the equipment. I got it all set up. I actually just have this in my living room, literally. So I've got 2 laptops, a mixing board, a microphone on a phone on a boom with a little what they call puff screen, which is
I have an iPad and 3 desktops all lined here, all in a row. So
yeah,
so
I'll probably move this into some kind of facility where we have a little bit of sound insulation as well, so you take out some of the ambient sound. One of the things you notice in a regular room like this is there's a little bit of background noise in the system that you don't get in the radio studios because they put that neat eggshell foam up all over to dampen the sound waves.
Now, how can you turn this into a money-making project?
Well, that's a whole
sponsors.
That's a whole secondary thing. So, maybe someday that's what we'll do. I think initially I'm just going to do it as a hobby, and we'll see where it goes. I also got to find somebody dumb enough to help me produce it in terms of maybe screening Skype calls for me. Because until we can do that, then I'm going to have to screen the calls and do the show at the same time, which doesn't seem very possible. So we might have to do a thing where, like, I maybe take a caller and as a guest instead of a caller initially until we figure out how to screen it a little bit better. But I'm thinking actually there'd be a way to screen it, which is for a person to tell me what they want to talk about on Facebook. In other words, we could actually go on Facebook like you and I just did.
Right.
And you could say, hey, Carl, I want to talk about, and I'd say, okay, call me. And then I'll just ignore anybody else who calls the Skype channel, unless it's the president or something, right? And if it's a person from the Facebook that I just approved, maybe what we'll do is we'll accept the call. And so maybe I can screen my own calls through Facebook, which would be unique.
Through Facebook. See, I called you twice last spring and you were very helpful. Basically, you told me it was useless because my ex-wife kept writing terrible things about me on her Facebook account.
Right. Well, you know what? They now have harassment cases by Facebook, where but usually it's accompanied by, threats of actual violence and not just pure maliciousness. But
yeah, she was just being horrible.
Hell hath no fury like a lover scorned, and so that's the way it is.
Well, hey, if you know anyone that's looking for military historical board games, send them my way.
All right, Bill, where would they find you? Where could they find you for that?
I'm on all over the internet and on Facebook.
You got a web address for us? Putting you on the spot, I know.
Web address, my Facebook there would work, but for web address, it is...
What would I Google to get to you?
GettysburgMiniatureSoldiers.com.
All right, there we go. All right, boss, thank you very much. I appreciate it greatly. And
Hey, have a great night.
All right, and then go ahead and listen back to this and tell me how corny we sound, okay?
All right.
All right, take care.
Bye.